Troops at the Pentagon, the White House begins playing down expectations for this month's Iraq elections. Winter discontent. The wild weather continues across the country. Tornadoes in the south, bone-chilling cold in the Midwest. Road to the inauguration tonight in Minnesota, a state becoming increasingly Republican, and a conversation with one of this region's favorite sons. And the trouble with Harry. Britain's young prince sparks outrage, caught on camera wearing a Nazi costume to a party.
This is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, reporting tonight from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Good evening as we continue on our road to the inauguration tour tonight from the Fitzgerald Theater in St. Paul, Minnesota, the home of a prairie home companion and a state with a fascinating political story to tell. More on that in a moment, but we begin tonight far from here with another violent day in Iraq and the first sign that the White House is now playing down expectations as the Iraq elections approach. We begin tonight at the Pentagon with NBC's Jim McLeshevsky.
President Bush at the Pentagon today for an update on the latest U.S. war plans in Iraq.
I'm mindful of the fact constantly we've got to review our plans.
On the tsunami region, where health officials will begin an intensive effort to deploy mosquito-killing spray tomorrow, hoping to head off the threat of malaria. One expert said today a malaria epidemic in the disaster area could kill 100,000 more people. And here at home, the FBI has arrested a Pennsylvania man accused of sending out 500,000 emails which falsely claimed to be raising money for tsunami victims. It is the very first U.S. arrest for a charity scam connected to the huge outpouring of goodwill for the survivors. Here's NBC's Pete Williams. There is information that can help you avoid a similar charity scam. It's on our website, nightly.msnbc.com. Now to the weather that continues to cause big problems around this nation, including here in the Twin Cities. -4 degrees as we go on the air tonight. Wind chill at -20. The cold weather here may break a 1994 record. In California tonight, authorities there officially ended the search for victims of the mudslide that killed 10 and warned residents not to return to the town of La Conchita because of the danger of another collapse. And elsewhere in the country, flooding, violent storms, and more bitter cold. Here is NBC's Kevin Tibbles.
Chicago.
Now to Major League Baseball and the dark humor circulating among fans about which players are going to show up at spring training having lost weight. It has to do with the steroid scare, and today baseball announced its new drug testing policy, which is already being questioned. Here is NBC's Kevin Cork.
The new guidelines were the result of a public relations squeeze play. Marquee players like Barry Bonds and Jason Giambi linked to steroids. The game's integrity was on the line.
My goal for this industry is zero tolerance regarding steroids. The agreement we will describe today is an important step towards achieving that goal.
Starting immediately, all players face unlimited year-round testing. First-time violators suspended 10 days. A fourth positive test results in a year-long suspension. And more banned substances, including THG, one of the steroids at the heart of the scandal.
I think it's very important. It says a lot about the players and how the majority of us feel about the issue.
But critics argue baseball's new policy is still more bunt than home run. NFL players, for example, caught using steroids face an immediate 4-game suspension. That's the equivalent of a 40-game suspension in baseball.
I would have liked it seen it tougher. It's not quite as tough, at least as far as first offense or a permanent ban for a fourth or fifth offense as minor league baseball is.
Since the whispers of steroid use began back in the late 80s, home run statistics have exploded. In 1989, teams hit an average of 118 home runs a season. By last year, it was 181. Today, a fresh start for baseball, says sports writer Rick Riley.
We have to go back and look back at this era and go, hey, that was the era of the syringe, you know? That was the cheating era. That was the era of steroids.
The agreement, an important step for the health of baseball's players and the health of the game itself. Kevin Cork, NBC News, Washington.
Years ago, this was a really rough area.
NBC News in depth tonight. Our road to the inauguration tour tonight stops here in Minnesota, which traditionally glows a liberal blue on the map. Kerry beat Bush, after all, in Minnesota by almost 3.5 percentage points. Red is gaining as the state is changing. We begin our reporting tonight with NBC's Campbell Brown.
Own it! 1, 2, 3! Own it!
In Anoka County, Minnesota, the game is familiar, but the faces in the crowd are changing. The farmers and merchants who Kerry's margin here fewer than 100,000 votes.
This is the political battleground in Minnesota. The analysts have a word to describe areas like this, the exurbs, the growing outer rim of suburbs where new subdivisions meet the farmland. And George Bush beat John Kerry soundly here.
Here is composed of NBC News, Anoka, Minnesota.
And now to what brings us here, to the home of a Prairie Home Companion. It's a radio tradition in its 30th anniversary year, written and hosted by the man from Lake Wobegon, a favorite son of Minnesota, whose personal politics run more blue than red. It's a Saturday night tradition. A pride of Anoka, Minnesota, Garrison Keillor, right here on his home stage in his red sneakers, the latest stop on our road to the inauguration tonight. And when we continue, we'll take you to London, where a young prince has some apologizing to do. There is word from Washington tonight that a $170 million FBI computer upgrade that was supposed to improve the way agents manage criminal and terrorism cases does not work. FBI officials say they hope to salvage some parts of the project, which is called Virtual Case File. But one official told the Associated Press the system's capabilities were only about 10% of what the Bureau wanted. No word on how much more it might cost to start over again. Now to the trouble with Harry. Tonight, a Jewish rights group is demanding that Prince Harry of Great Britain visit Auschwitz to atone. This after he was photographed wearing a Nazi uniform to a costume party. It has lit up the UK. Our report tonight from NBC's Keith Miller in London.
A nation is asking tonight, what was he thinking? Prince Harry, the youngest son of the late Princess Diana.
And we're back in a moment with one weatherman's warning.
Last year, Adrian Peterson.
We're back a final time here in St. Paul. How cold is it tonight here in the Twin Cities? Listen to this snippet from our local 10 o'clock news on KARE TV. The weatherman, Ken Barlow, had this advice last night to viewers before this cold snap arrived.
I heard that. You had a great chance to get out and chip off the ice. You still do. And do it, because if you don't, it's going to freeze even just rock hard. That stuff's not going to melt for months if you don't get out and do it. Because this is truly Arctic air coming down.
You could almost hear the scraping going on throughout the Twin Cities last night after that warning from the weatherman. And that is our broadcast for this Thursday, January 13th, 2005. I'm Brian Williams, reporting tonight from St. Paul, Minnesota. We'll see you tomorrow night from Pittsburgh, where it's slightly warmer. Good night.
Join Tom Brokaw and Chris Matthews for an eye-opening look at 4 decades of inauguration.
Tom Cameron's great.
Brett Huntley, David Brent, John Chen. Tom Brokaw.